The United States and Canada are investigating 3 mystery flying objects shot down by the military in the past 3 days. Pentagon officials are trying to work out exactly what these objects are and why there seems to be an increase in the numbers spotted in the sky. Joining us live now is Ross Coulthart, journalist and co-host of the Need to Know podcast, which investigates UAPs and UFOs. Ross, really appreciate your time. Thank you. There seems to be so much we still don't know about this story. Why is that? Why is the US seemingly being opaque about what these objects actually are?
Well, one thing we can be sure of, Ashley, is these are not alien spacecraft or little green men from Zeta Reticuli. It's looking increasingly likely that these objects are from some foreign state actor, and because of where they've been launched from, because they're using the prevailing winds to drift across the top of the continental United States and Alaska, it's very, very likely that they were deployed from either China or Russia. What's interesting and what's been absolutely catastrophic for the US Department of Defense is that it's been dragged kicking and screaming into acknowledging that it had turned down the sensitivity of its radar systems, which meant that it previously wasn't detecting these objects. And that the only reason, or one of the major reasons why this is now being made public, is because of obligations imposed on the Pentagon and the intelligence services by the Congress in December through the defence procurement laws. And they specifically required Congress that the Defence Department and the intelligence services start reporting on unidentified anomalous phenomena flying across the United States, something that pilots and civilian aircraft pilots and military pilots have been reporting for years and largely being ignored by, unfortunately, defence and intelligence officials in the United States.
Canadian officials seem to be giving us a little bit more information. I see they characterised the objects overnight as being lighter than air. They seem to suggest that the objects shot down in recent days didn't have propulsion systems. They were generally being guided by wind currents. But as you point out, we still don't know who actually owns them or sent them up in the first place. You mentioned that the US has changed its radar settings now. So are we assuming then that this means these objects have been roaming the skies for years, but they've just been going undetected, or do you think it has been more being ignored?
It's speculation, but what we do know is that the United States, like Australia, keeps its data on such radar telemetry and other sensors. We've got here in Australia and also in the United States some of the best sensors in the world through Pine Gap, the joint American facility with Australia. So the issue is going to be the same question being asked here in Australia as well. Now, I noticed that Mike Burgess, the ASIO Director General, has told a Senate Estimates Committee that there in fact is no suggestion, no evidence that there have been such Chinese balloon overflights across Australia. But the big question now, they're going to do a retrospective analysis in America because they've been forced by the by the White House, they've been forced to do a review. So there are now going to be very tough questions being asked. And can I also just point out, actually, the other thing that's coming out here is there's been very contradictory messages coming from the defence officials that have been briefing media on this issue. At one stage, we were being told that these 3 still unknown objects were somehow anomalous. For example, there was an allegation that somehow there was meddling by the objects with the weapons sensor systems of some of the jet fighter aircraft that were sent up to engage with them. The US is now walking back from those claims, and so there's now going to be, whether they like it or not, a lot of public paranoia in the United States that the messaging from the White House and from the Pentagon has at times been catastrophically contradictory. And if we ever are invaded by little green men, this is going to be something they're going to have to work out because, frankly, the lesson from this whole episode is that people have been giving different messages at different times. And frankly, the NORAD, which is the North American Air Defence Command, a day ago, nearly 2 days ago now, said they know what these objects are. So a lot of people, especially top defence commentators in the United States, are now saying, well, why the heck can't the public know? Why are they fueling ongoing speculation that can be I think, quite ridiculous and absurd, that makes people think there's more to this whole episode than there really is. Because I think ultimately what's going to come out of this episode is that these objects are some kind of foreign actor, state-sponsored drone or balloon, and it's going to have been a very poorly handled episode. And I think the Pentagon is going to have learned lessons from this whole exercise.
Ross, you have really been ahead of the curve on this story for some years now through your research. I know you've interviewed some very important figures in the US military about their experiences with unidentified objects in the skies. In the context of this China spy balloon saga, what themes emerged in your research about this phenomenon? And the people you've spoken with, what sort of objects do they describe seeing? Are they balloon-like in their descriptions?
Okay. There's two separate issues here. The first is the red herring of these three objects that are still unidentified, but which will probably turn out to be Russian or Chinese drones or balloons of some kind. The second issue is the incredible mystery that's still an official mystery that the Pentagon, the Congress, admits is a real mystery of unidentified anomalous phenomena turning up over nuclear sites, military installations, all across the continental United States, and indeed in the Middle East, and indeed here in Australia. I've interviewed pilots from the east and west coast of the United States who've been on training exercises where they've literally looked across from their cockpit of their aircraft and they've seen spherical objects off their right wing. They've videoed them and they've given them to their commanders, and those videos are still being kept confidential. They're the subject of inquiries now by an organisation called ARROW, which is a Pentagon UAP investigation office inside the Defence Department of the United States. But the thing that is important to remember is that an official report to Congress, both one in the middle of last year and another one in early January this year, they've formally admitted that whatever these objects are, there is an ongoing mystery that has never been fully explained, where hundreds of UAPs are entering airspace in America, often controlled military airspace, posing direct risks to national security and flight safety, doing manoeuvres in some cases that are far beyond known human science. They're doing hypersonic maneuvers, instantaneous velocity. They're going transmedium from air to water, water to air, and in some cases, they're seen going into orbit. Now, this isn't me saying this. This is the Pentagon reporting this to the Congress. They're also displaying what you would call no visible means of propulsion, possibly anti-gravitic technologies. They've got stealth mode. Now, it's this stuff that is still the subject of investigation by the Pentagon's ARROW office. And we learned today from the White House National Security Communications spokesperson, Jake Kirby, that the President Biden, since mid-2021, has been insisting that UAPs are front and centre in presidential briefings. So the United States sees this now as a priority. And I have to say, I do think it's a concern that the official position from the Australian Defence Department is UAPs are not an issue here down under, because I can tell you, Ashley, I have spoken to jet fighter pilots, military cargo pilots, military reconnaissance pilots, civilian pilots, all of whom are telling me that they're seeing this phenomena down under as well. And there's a real concern that they don't feel confident about coming forward with this information, because the official position from the Chief of Air Staff, the Chief of Defence Force, is that we're not interested in UAPs. And it has to be asked, why? Because the United States has told me they are now engaging with Australia as an ally, inviting it to collaborate with them on UAPs. And I am told that there were oral briefings given by the UAP task force, a Pentagon office, to the defence attachés of Australia at the US Embassy in Washington, D.C. on UAPs. So I think Australia needs to be a lot more open about the fact that there is a mystery phenomenon being detected in our skies. I know for a fact it's being picked up at the Pine Gap facility in the centre of Australia, probably the most important American base outside of the continental USA. And I think at some stage, Australia is going to have to be dragged kicking and screaming, just like America, to acknowledging that there is a new reality in our skies of UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. We don't know what they are. We're not saying they're alien, but whatever they are, they do need to be investigated.
Ross Coulthart, it is fascinating stuff and all very puzzling. No doubt there'll be a much firmer focus on what's going on in our skies after events of recent days. Really appreciate you joining us with your analysis. Thank you so much.
It's a real pleasure.